Well, good evening again. Y'all hear me okay? Okay. Well, tonight, I don't have the shirt for this. I should have wore one, I guess. We sure wouldn't be able to put a mic on that. If you will, we'll just go ahead and get right into it. If you can stand with me. I'm going to read Philippians 4, 8, and 9. And tonight I'm going to be talking to you about meditation of the heart, soul, and spirit. And I thought it was funny. I don't know how many of you were at Troy's Wednesday night for the Bible study, but Jacqueline was like, he taught on that. I was like, well, guess what? I wasn't there, so that's funny. Philippians 4, 8, and 9. It says, and now, dear brothers and sisters, let me say one more thing as I close this letter. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right. Think about things that are pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice all you learned from me and heard from me and saw me doing, and the God of peace will be with you. You can be seated. So, this is probably going to be fairly quick tonight because I'm really just talking about those scriptures that I'm going to mention here. But point one, I'm trying not to get ahead of the projector people, but point one is I'm saying fix your thoughts. Right there in that verse it says, fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right. And it's not always easy to fix our thoughts. I know we talked about several times, I've heard Doc mention it, how when you'll be listening to a sermon or something, probably even tonight, and your mind will start wandering off this way and that way, the way that the enemy tries to take your mind on other things. Or maybe something as simple as, something you've got in the oven or something you want to put in the oven or whatever. But it's so hard to fix your thoughts because our thoughts are always flooded. Our mind is always flooded with many things. And because of that brings us to point two. We've got to fix our thoughts because we've got to keep putting it into practice. What did he say right here? He says, keep putting into practice all you learned from me and heard from me and saw me doing. And the God of peace will be with you. So we know that the God of peace is going to be with us. But we've got to fix our thoughts. We've got to keep putting into practice. So that means that I've got to fix my thoughts over and over again. I've got to keep putting into practice exactly what it is. It's just like, up here, we practice and practice and practice and practice, and it just gets better and better the more you practice. It's the same thing with your thoughts. You've got to take those thoughts and you've got to command them down. You've got to give them to Christ. You've got to take them the way that the enemy is meaning for them, and we've got to change them to fix on things that are good, even in bad circumstances. It's so hard for us sometimes when we have mountains in our way, and we sit there and focus on that mountain, and we look at that circumstance. But we've got to take them. We've got to fix our thoughts. We've got to say, you know what? I understand that mountain's there, but what is lovely? What is pure here? Maybe there's even something in the situation. Maybe there's something in your mountain that's actually lovely and pure, because all mountains are not 100% bad. And a matter of fact, like I shared last week, the mountain is only going to be as bad as you make it anyway. So if you've got a hill and you're making it into a mountain, well, chances are it's still a hill. And if it's still a hill, there's something about it that's going to be lovely because it's not a mountain. If nothing else, you might rejoice in it because it's a hill. You know what I'm saying? Fix your thoughts on it just because it's a hill. Then that takes us to point three. We meditate to please your God, our God. That's why we meditate. Meditate. We fix our thoughts. We keep putting into practice. We meditate on it. We dwell on it. And we do it to please God, because I just shared with you, if we don't, other things are going to creep in there. It's just like he talks about idle hands are of the devil. If you're not doing something, eventually you're going to do the wrong thing. So the more that we can focus on and do for Christ, the better it'll be. Same thing with your thoughts. See, this body it loves sin. I mean, it loves it. It was created to sin once Adam and Eve did what they did. And we've got to take that stuff and we've got to change it to where it loves God, to where it wants to please God. We've got to do this daily to fix our thoughts. That's how we keep putting it into practice. You think about anything you do. You think about a spiritual gift. You think about speaking in tongues. I've shared with you before how, I could only speak some of it. And then I went to a Word Alive event one day, and Kent pushed us and pushed us and pushed us. And now, I don't even, I don't know what my stopping point is. I'm sure I got one. But it's almost funny because we were in Georgia a couple weeks ago, went down to see my sister in the hospital. And, you know what? I got to stop. I got to give a praise report. I did not give a praise report. I have at work, at Sears, I have 2 jobs, Office Max and Sears. They have what's called Best in Blue. And what that pretty much is that you meet all of the sales metrics and go above it. And I had a buddy of mine that works there. I was off today, but I had a buddy of mine that texted me earlier and said, hey, you made it. So I want to praise God for that, because that's a little bit of bonus money down the road. But I thought it was actually funny because I've been around retail a long time. I've been around management a long time. And I don't really focus on that kind of stuff, because it was kind of funny when I first started working there. There's this guy that's in receiving, and we kind of tease each other a lot. And he said, you're going to make Best in Blue, aren't you? And at that time, I didn't know what Best in Blue was. Here I was just starting. I was like, yeah, whatever, And so I guess I did. I have to go back to him Monday and be like, hey, Stan, guess what? I made Best in Blue. But the point is that, we've got to, and I'll get to that part here in a minute, because that's going to be point 5. So that's why I wanted to share that with you also in terms of that praise report. But it also is going to tie into the lesson here. So. But we meditate to please God, and that's the main thing we want to focus on. If we're meditating for any other reason, and I don't want to upset nobody. I really don't. I ain't trying to step on any toes. But there are some meditation programs out there that you can involve yourself with, and I'm just asking you to check it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying just check it. I remember, I don't know how many of you saw When Nature Calls. But bless Nan Murphy's heart. She was my old pastor's wife. And I guess she was more right than we were at the time. But do you remember the part where he's sitting there and he's trying to remember where what was that? Something. I'm trying to remember what he was looking for. I don't know, but the long story is short, he remembers it's in the guano. But the reason he did it was because he meditated. And he's doing that, he's all that stuff. And my pastor's wife at the time then, she comes in and she loved this phrase, oh my cow. And I fell out every time she said it. But she come in there and she said, oh my cow, what are y'all watching? And of course, Phil's in there with us, her husband, the pastor, and his son and me. And, we're just laughing at the movie. Jim Carrey's funny, whatever. And so she comes in there and runs the whole movie at the very end, y'all need to turn this off, But the point is, that's the type of meditation that you might just want to check up on. That's what I'm trying to say there. But we have to meditate to please God. That's the main thing we're doing it for. So if there's anything that is not pleasing to God in your meditation, please check it before Him. Okay, point 4, moving on. Even the words from your mouth have to be pleasing to God. We have to meditate to change the words of our mouth. What do you mean? Well, I can stand here and tell you that I had the same disease that Doc had. I was a cussing like a sailor, big time. And, I thought it was cool. And after a while, it doesn't become cool anymore. When you're in high school, it becomes your language. And praise God, He delivered me from all that. But I had to meditate on that. I had to change my words. Even now, I mean, I get tempted to say stuff. It would be very easy to fall back into a lot of that stuff, or hit myself in the, my thumb with a hammer, or, whatever. And you got to be able to take those words and make them pleasing to God. And I know when John Jenkins was here, he talked about, and I mean, I struggle with this sometimes too, but he talked about us saying, "Oh my God," and all that, and how we took it real lightly. And, I mean, it's just really how we use it. I mean, we just have to be real careful with that stuff, because, if you're not using His name the right way, it's not going to be pleasing to Him. So, just something to be mindful of there. But I'm also going to talk to you about Psalms 19:14. You don't have to bear with me here because I got markings all over this thing. I'm still trying to come up with a great way to do this, and something gets whatever every time. Yes, it says, 19:14 says, "May the words of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart be pleasing to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer." So, it says, "May the words of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart." Well, I just told you a while ago that we got to fix our thoughts. So we got thoughts here and we got thoughts here. What does He say? Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Doc likes to quote that one a lot. But we've got to be able to fix those thoughts so they're pleasing to Him. And then point 5. We've got to rejoice. And that's what I was telling you about the praise report. Well, why do we have to rejoice? For one thing, if you fixed your thoughts and you kept putting into practice and you meditate to please God and your words are pleasing to God, you've got a reason to rejoice, because you've got a lot of stuff that you've overcome daily. But let me give you another reason to rejoice if that's not enough for you. That would be in Psalm 104, verse 34. "May He be pleased by all these thoughts about Him, for I rejoice in the Lord." So we want Him to be pleased by all these thoughts. And we've got to rejoice in Him. We've got to rejoice in the Lord. And why I said, let me give you something to tell you to rejoice in, that would be in Psalm 77. And I'll go back if you are missing any of this, but it's pretty short, so you should be able to write it all down if you're doing it. Psalm 77, verses 11 and 12. "I recall all that you have done, O Lord. I remember your wonderful deeds." Now, he says of long ago in my version. What does the one up there say? Of long ago. That's sad. Of long ago. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that I rejoice in your deeds of long ago. Now, don't get me wrong. God has done stuff in the past that by all means I'm rejoicing Him with. But the other part of it is I want to be able to rejoice for something that happened yesterday. I want to be able to rejoice for something that happened 5 minutes ago. I mean, it was almost like my heart just kind of broke when I read that. It was like, really? Really? You're going to sit there and say, and I mean, when he said it, I mean, he may have had every reason to say what he was thinking, and he may have been talking about something in the past. But then this is what I love, though, on top of that. Because even though it was in the past, look what he says next. He says, they are constantly in my thoughts. I cannot stop thinking about them. So even though it was long ago, they're still constantly in his thoughts. He can't stop thinking about them. God gave me a song, y'all have heard it a couple times here, In Your Eyes. And what that talks about is God's thoughts with us. And we're always constantly in His thoughts. And you know, I'm going to go back to a worldly relationship with a husband or wife or girlfriend or boyfriend, fiance, whatever. When you reflect on that person, when you think about that person, you want to do good things for that person. You want to please that person. You want to make that person happy. And yet we don't really understand love fully like we need to. Because God is love. God is unconditional love. God is the unconditional love that we need to be with each other. That we can't fathom, that we can't even begin to express. Even the smallest little token of something that we do for somebody, that's all it is. It's just a small token. Because we don't understand how to express the way we need to express. And I'll go a little step further past that. Same thing, relationships, even family. Family's no different. You get upset with each other. Well, let's give an example of, okay, I got one. Let's say this, I'll use a small example. Let's say that you're all sitting around the dinner table and you finish eating and you've had a good time and everything. And one person walks over and picks up your glass and your plate, starts serving. Let's say it's somebody that's not done. Let's say it's me, okay? Let's say it's somebody that don't do it often, okay? So because of that, I've taken extra care. I've taken extra time to think about you, to think about you needing your plate removed, to think about, and like I said, I know it's small, but I mean, we've got to look at it so huge because that's a servant's heart. And I'm not just talking about just because of me. I'm talking about, if there's anything in us, it's Christ. That's good. If there's anything in us, it's Christ is good, period. It doesn't matter if it's something as small as moving a plate off. That's what it's like we miss that so much. We get so focused on things that we see that somebody does and just take it for granted. And I mean, I'm guilty. I'm 100% guilty. So that's what I'm saying. If we've got these thoughts with each other, I mean, imagine the person that didn't even think about the plate. Now, the person that didn't think about the plate's got two things they can do. They can say, well, I should have thought about the plate and beat themselves up for not thinking about the plate. Or they could just not care. I mean, that's the gist of it. But that doesn't mean that person can't turn around and maybe get the glass, and put it in the sink. I'm just saying that I think Christ, I think God put a lot more into this than we do. That's what I'm saying. I think we view stuff and we take it for granted and we don't see things that are small as big because they are. He does. I guarantee you when we're doing things like that, He's looking at it as an act of love. I mean, because that's what it is. And you may not even be thinking about it as an act of love because it's so small. Then we look at bigger things. Let's say that after dinner you get upset with each other about something. Maybe somebody turns the TV on and you don't want to watch that. So you go into selfish mode, because that's what that is. And I'm going to tell you, that's something I used to struggle with a lot, and sometimes I still do. Tim gets kind of carried away on channels sometimes, and I'm going, what are we watching this for? Like the other day, we went over to somebody's house, and he starts watching cartoons. I'm like, really? Of all the stuff that's on, you're watching Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs? But, but you know, so I had to get a little selfish. I was like, you know, so I like grabbed the remote, and I'm like, hey, don't you think you'd like this? This is Stan Lee. This is superheroes. You know, it talks about. And so I thought, okay, he's going to like this, and so I'll leave it there for a minute, which I can actually stand it versus. He goes, what happened to Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs? So I guess nothing. So here, you just take the remote. I'm fixing to go find something else to do. Apparently, we're going to entertain the 5-year-old in you tonight. I don't know what's going on here. Well, there you go. See, so where was my thoughts at then? See, I can go on and on and on. That's a good point. But, you know, like I said, you can get upset with them about something on TV, so you get selfish. Well, then you've forgotten about that person taking your plate or taking your glass. And you may know it's still there, but now you're focused on what you're upset about. And you're normally going to make sure that person knows you're upset. And that's something else we got to work on. I mean, we got to work on, why do we always have to let everybody know we're mad? It's one thing to be mad, but why do we have to let everybody know? Good question. All right. Well, I've rambled on enough. And I went to meddling, so that's probably a good reason to shut her down. But thank y'all tonight. God bless you, and have a good night.